all to help us just develop that foundation of faith so that we can start on the path to God. Then once we begin on the path, we start to get our own evidence. Not the ultimate evidence of meeting God face to face, but we start to get experiences along the way that give us an indication we're going in the right direction. And then in the end, we'll be talking about the specifics of what is the path to God later this week. But by following that path, when you reach the point of total heart purification and complete surrender to God, through God's grace, your senses and your mind become divine. Krishna describes this point in the Gita. He says, Divyam dadami te chakshu pashyame yogamaishwaram, and dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. He says, when someone completely surrenders to me, I give them a divine mind. I give them divine eyes, divine senses. So who can know God? God can know God. Or if God gives you a divine mind, you can also know God. Who can see God? God can see God. Or if God gives you divine eyes, then you can also see God. So with God's grace, anybody can see Him. Anybody can know Him. It means if we surrender our intellect to Him, then He gives us a divine intellect with which we can know Him. So what is the extent science can reach to? Science is limited to this material field, and it will always be incomplete, but kah paramo devah kasyan mrityur vibheti kasya jnanena akhilam bhavati. Ved says, Krishno havai paramam daivatam. By knowing Supreme God, you know everything. Think back to what I explained before. God is beyond everything, so everything is within Him. Under God, you have Maya, all the souls, the mind, your senses, everything kramse is under. So if you reach God, and through God's grace you know God, there's nothing left to know. If you know God, you know everything. So you want to perfect scientific knowledge, in your own mind at least. You can't give it to everybody else. But you want complete knowledge, you have to know God. So material science is limited to this material field, but if a soul surrenders to God, he can have total knowledge, absolute knowledge. He can know the absolute truth by knowing God. And in fact, this is what every soul desires. This is what we all want, is God. Loke nahi savidyet yo naram manubratah. Valmiki Ramayana says, there is no soul, there never has been, nor will there ever be, who does not desire God. So we all want God, and we all want to believe in God. Then why don't we? Why would someone say, I don't believe in God? That's only because of the negative reserves in our own mind. We have some kind of negativity towards God that we have in our own mind. But deep down in our soul, we want God, and we want to believe in God. But our mind has those negative reserves that prevent us from trusting God, prevent us from having faith in Him. So by doing proper devotion, that can be cleaned out, and that faith can be developed in God. So this is how this understanding should be kept in the mind about science has its field and God is a totally separate field, but there is a totally logical approach to get to God, but it involves faith from the beginning, and then you get the evidence as you go along the way, and you get the ultimate evidence when you completely surrender to God. Then you come face to face with God. So tomorrow we'll continue this series by bringing up another topic. We're going to get to the topic of the path to God. But before we do that, there's one more doubt that has to be cleared up, which is the question of other religions. In their religious books, there are different things written than what is written in our books. Some things that are in our books are not in their books. Some things we believe in, they don't believe in. Our description of God, although there are many similarities, there are many differences too. So there's a big question in people's minds that why all these different religions? Are they all the same? What is the difference? Is there something that makes Hinduism unique and great? So we'll take up that topic from tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions today that they'd like to ask before we do a little bit of kirtan and meditation? Yes?
You know when we're close to like the time of death, say we're thinking about Krishna and then we'll go to Krishna but only for a certain time.
Say that at the time of death, say we're thinking of Krishna.
Yeah, say we go to Krishna for a short time. How will you know like where to place you when you're born in your next life?
It's not only what you were thinking of at the time of death, because what you're asking is, or what you're thinking about is, before you went unconscious, right? When you die, first you go unconscious. So before you went unconscious, you were thinking of Krishna, right? But actually that's not the moment of death. Because you go unconscious and then your soul leaves your body. So at that time, you're not consciously thinking of anything, but in your subconscious mind, you'll be remembering whatever you're most attached to. So according to that, you'll be reborn. Not according to what was your last conscious thought, but what is your mind attached to, that's what it's going to be thinking as your soul leaves the body, and accordingly, you'll be reborn, according to the law of attraction.
When you say that surrender your intellect to God, what do you mean by intellect?
So it means, see, if we have the pride that I'm a very intelligent person and I can learn anything I want to in this world, true. And I can know God with my intellect, false. With the material intellect, we cannot understand God. So then how can we reach to God? Because I do want to know God. I do want to understand God. So I can't study or reach up to Him on my own. But if I surrender to Him, that means in my intellect, I get this understanding that my intellect cannot reach God. So I surrender. That means you surrendered your intellect. Then God graces you with a divine intellect and you can know Him.
By God, so why is He beyond Maya?
Maya was never created. Were you here? Sorry for asking, just so I know how to answer your question. Were you here yesterday? Or
yeah.
You were. So you heard me explain that the Maya and the souls and God are all eternal, right? Did you heard?
Yeah.
So it means Maya never had a beginning. Maya wasn't created by God. It's eternally existed. But nonetheless, God activates and dissolves. He activates Maya from its dormant state, like turning on a machine, you can say. You know, a human being has to do that, right? A living human being has to plug it in and turn it on. It won't turn itself on. Similarly, God has to activate Maya because Maya is a lifeless power. As long as God keeps it activated, it keeps running. Like you plug your TV in, you have to keep it plugged in. You can't plug it in, turn it on, and then unplug it. It won't keep running. The energy has to keep coming. So God keeps it activated. And then when he decides, it all dissolves back into that dormant seed form of Maya. So Maya is God's power and operates dependent upon God activating it. Therefore we say Maya is under God. God is not under the control of Maya. Maya is under the control of God. And when the whole unlimited universe is dissolved, where does it go? It dissolves into God. Just like the souls. Souls get their life from God. Although God didn't create them because they've existed forever, God gives life to them. And also during the time of Mahapralaya, where do we go? We also merge into God in a dormant form. Yes, sir.
I think the Sanskrit word is the Shraddha, and the
That's
faith
right.
is actually wrong translation. Right? It's not the closest translation, but not the actual. Am I right?
Well, faith is the best word we have in the English language. Belief, faith, there's no other word. Yeah. Yes.
As you said that we need divine senses to know God. But as I know today that to know God, you have to go on certain path, a knowledge that has to be again perceived by at moment. I don't have divine senses. So material senses I have to go by material senses only.
That's right.
So, like, if there are certain movements, I'm not able to understand that we need divine senses to know God, but the way to God, you have to start with the material.
With the material senses, that's right. So that's why God's grace is so important, and the path is all about surrender, because there's nothing we could do with material senses. There's no amount of effort or practice that we could do to reach up to God. Because we're material, He's divine. So how do you cross, where's the link? How do you bridge that gap? God's grace bridges the gap. So the path is about surrendering. So if we're 10% surrendered, we're getting 10% of God's grace. That purifies your heart. So then you keep incrementally increasing that. You get to 20%, 50%. So the more you purify your heart by practicing devotion means you lovingly think of God. You attach your mind to Him. That's actually surrender. But you're just partly surrendered. So you're getting part grace. But nonetheless, that grace has its effect. It purifies your mind. So when you get up to 100%, what actually happens is, think of it this way. God's divine power is slowly impregnating your mind. So you're 10% surrendered, you've been 10%, that power has been able to pervade your being. Eventually you get to 100% surrender, that divine power of God actually divinizes your whole being. Once you get 100% surrendered, He divinizes. Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe 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 Govind Govind Radhe Radhe